So high school was pre-college. We know we have pre-K, right? You have pre-kindergarten before you go to kindergarten. High school at the time was really a pre-college track. So people who were going to go to college went to high school. People who were not going to go to college, there was much less reason to go to high school. And so a greater share of the high school graduating class went on to and graduated from college than was the case in 1935, when it became much more the norm for people to stay in school through 12th grade. Today, the numbers that I was able to find is 53%. So the bachelor's degrees awarded in 2010 as a share of the high school degrees in 2006, 4 years earlier, about 53%. So around half of the high school graduating class goes on and earns a college degree. A greater share than that goes on to college. I didn't print those numbers up. A greater share than 53% goes on to college, but not everybody graduates. So something about 77 or so percent of high school graduating classes today go on and start college, but only about half of the graduating classes finish. And about a third get a 2-year degree or just simply don't finish college. Educational attainment, table 4. These numbers are decadal, 1910 to 2010. The share of the population, and the base here is the population 25 and over. So the share of the population 25 and over that has less than 5 years of school has gone from 23% in 1910 to 2% and is no longer recorded today. Now, the denominator here is the population 25 and over. So my Uncle Art is 95 years old. He's still in this denominator, even though he went to high school in the 1930s. Right? So this denominator is not simply the school-age population in any given year. It's everybody who's alive, who's over the age of 25 in any given year. So trends change more slowly when that's your denominator. High school graduates, 13% of the population 25 and over had graduated high school in 1910. By 1950, that's jumped all the way to 33%. That's a pretty astounding jump over a short period of time. Today, it's up at 87%. So 87% of the United States population ages 25 and over are high school graduates. About 30% today are college graduates. That's gone from 3% in 1910. That did not change very much over the same period. So when we talk about the high school movement, we're getting the high school movement, we're not getting the college movement. So about 3% of the population had graduated from college in 1910, about 5% in 1940, and then we get a big increase. We'll talk about education again in the third part of the course, in the post-World War II part, when we get to talk about the GI Bill and the rise in college educational attainment in the post-World War II period. But I put the data there so you can see where we're going. Today we have about 30% of the population today has a college degree. A couple more pictures. This is from the Golden and Cass article. This is showing students in 2- and 4-year institutions in the United States as a fraction of 18 to 21-year-olds. So this is what share of the 18 to 21-year-old population is in school, and you can see that this is increasing. Here's the bump that comes after World War II. We talk about that in the third part of the course. The part we're concerned with today is this lower trend from 1900 to 1940 or so. Why college enrollment is up? Well, one reason, before we do the analytics, is that there are increases in specialization by field. There's an increase in the number of subjects that are taught, and there are an increased number of colleges. I need to catch up with my notes. So this table number 5 is showing you the number of new colleges and universities established. So this is not the stock. It's not the number that exists. It's the number that have been added. So how many additional colleges and universities are there? So this is the change from the previous period and not the total. It's not the stock. So between 1638 and 1819, that's a pretty long time. It's almost 200 years. Over that almost 200-year period, there were a total of, count them, 9 public colleges and universities that were established in the United States. That's it, over 200 years, just 9. And 40 private schools. In the 1820 to 1859 period, we get another 15 public and another 225 private, and then we get a bigger increase in the establishment of more, that's a bad sense. And then in the period starting 1860s, for reasons I'll show you in just a minute, we start getting more and more public schools being established. One of the big things that's contributing to the establishment of public schools is the 1862 and then the 1890 Morrill Land Grant Act. The 1862 Morrill Act. 1862 is in the midst of Civil War. So here's another one of these acts that's passed because the Southerners are out of Congress. So with the 1862 Morrill Land Grant Act, the federal government says, we're going to take federal lands and we're going to use those federal lands in each of the states to establish a public, well, not always public, let me talk, to establish a college or university. So there's the picture that show, can you see it for me? So here we are, University of California. We are a land grant college. So we were established by the federal government with on land, a grant of land to establish the University of California. These are the colleges and universities that were established in 1862, and you can see there's one in every state. So University of California, University of Nevada, Utah State, Colorado State. Many of them are public, but not all. There's some privates. Clemson University, Cornell University are examples of, Purdue University are examples of land grant colleges that are not state-run institutions. Okay? So, but most of these are, here's UC, Oregon State, Washington State, and so on, University of Tennessee. We're getting close to March Madness, so all of us can know our colleges by who gets in the big dance. Vote Leisha for the senior class award. We're talking women's basketball, right? Yeah, okay. What's Cal's women's basketball rank? 6. 1 in California, 6 in the country. Rockin'. Absolutely awesome. Okay, the 1862 Morrill Land Grant Act is followed by the 1890 Morrill Land Grant Act. By 1890, of course, the Southerners are back. And two things. One is that there are not very many colleges and universities in the South, and the second is that most of those institutions are serving primarily a white population. So the 1890 Morrill Act adds what are the historically black colleges and universities that are found, many of these in the South. And again, names that some of you may be familiar with from the big dance. So North Carolina A&T, Tennessee State, Kentucky State, Prairie View A&M, and so on. So a lot of colleges established in 1890. A&M is agricultural and mechanical arts, and A&T is agricultural and technical arts. So the idea of a lot of these colleges that are established in 1862 is most of them had what were called extension offices, and so they were supposed to have an ag school. So when you look at the University of California, and it's not the econ department that's established with the land grant, it's the ag econ department. So it's the ag school down there in Giannini that is the historical part of the university, and the reason that we're a land grant institution, and the reason that that's still part of the university. People are like, what do we need an ag school for in Berkeley? Well, that's why. That's the whole. That's it. That's it is what it is. Here we are. So there you go. Okay. These public schools, not as many public schools established as the private schools, but yet most of the students are going to wind up in public schools. So the third column of this, I do the ratio of public to private, so you can see the difference between the big public and the small private schools. The median number of students per school, in 1897, the public schools were about twice as big as your typical private school. These are colleges again. By 1934, the public schools are about 4 times as big. Good luck on your test. Are about 4 times as big as the private schools. What share of institutions have 1,000 or more students? In 1897, 5% of the private schools and 10% of the public schools had more than 1,000 students. By 1934, 14% of the private, but 71% of the public schools had more than 1,000 students. So that ratio of public to private is getting bigger and bigger. So the public schools are growing relative to the private schools. What percentage of students go to schools that have more than 1,000 students? In 1897, 35% of the students in private and 41% of the students in public schools went to big schools. By 1934, two-thirds, 63% of the private college students and 94% of students like you who are in public colleges and universities are going to schools that have more than 1,000 students. So your experience is by far the norm, and your experience is by far the norm very early on. So most students going to public schools and universities, and most of them going to big public schools and universities. All right. Figure 2, which is at the back of the handout, and it's from the article, shows you what share of students are in public schools as opposed to private schools. And again, you see the same thing. So you can see the rise over time in the share of students in public schools. All right, 10 minutes. 3 economic issues that come up when we talk about education. One is, should I go to school? So what's the private return to education? So that's what we're going to look at, and it's the source of the analysis that Golden and Katz do in the first table that we're going to look at. The second is, who should pay? There are positive externalities. There's a social return. There's social capital that's created by people being educated. And so should there be public support for education? So what's the extent of public support for education? We're going to look at that question as well. And can we explain educational attainment? That's actually related to the first question. Can we explain why in some states there are more people who go on to college versus in other states more people who don't even finish high school? I had a brainstorm here, but there's only 10 minutes left, so I will ask. I'm not going to put you in groups to do this. I'll just ask you. So why do people go to school? Why finish high school? Or why go to college? Either one. Give me an answer. Yep. Better job prospects. Okay, so one reason could be job prospects, and so that's going to be measured with income. So income is higher if you finish school than it is if you don't. Period. So expectations, so what your family expects you to do? Yeah. Okay, so the expectations probably aren't going to, well, maybe they do. Hold that thought, because that may help explain the regional patterns. Yep, I do. To figure out what field people want to be in. So you go to school because you're not quite sure what it is you want to be when you grow up, and school tries to help you figure that out. Okay. What else? What else do you think? Opportunity cost. So another reason to stay in school or to go on to college has to do with opportunity cost. Maybe there aren't very many other opportunities available to you, and so you might as well stay in school. Or maybe there are really good alternatives, and so what was it, Bill Gates or the other guy? Dropped out of school. Bill Gates. So increase in standard of living is back to the income. So income, jobs, intellectual curiosity. Bless you, my child. Like to learn. Okay, so yeah. Networking, okay. So social networks. And the advantage of those social networks are both private. There's the you get to know people, but also you may be able to link that social networking back into the income effect. All right. So what Golden and Katz do is they're going to look at these data on enrollment that we had here in Table 3 and try to analyze. The first question is, why would people finish high school? So what determines the variation in high school graduation rates? Now, before I say those words, let me go up here. So we had an equation that you apparently all loved, which is the capital asset pricing model, which was used to explain what determines the profit, whether or not the purchase of a slave was profitable. Let's use the same equation yet again. So net profit, same equation, is equal to the sum over the life of the asset, so the sum over time, of the net earnings discounted by the number of years. So the net earnings, using the notation that Golden and Katz use, we're going to say that the wage that you can earn with an education is E sub t. So that's how much you can earn if you have a degree, and we're going to subtract from that W sub t, because that's going to be what you could earn if you didn't have an education. So the difference is the marginal gain. So ET minus WT is the marginal gain. It's how much more your income is as a result of staying in school. Okay? Now, you're going to earn that income every year over time, and so we want to discount that. So we're going to take and divide that by 1 plus the interest rate, or the discount rate, raised to the power t, where t measures the amount of time in years. So I've got time is running from 0 to t, to uppercase t. I need to subtract from that the costs of this asset, which is acquiring your education. The costs are all incurred in the year in which you acquire the education, and so the costs are the direct cost of going to school. So the uppercase C is what they use for the books, the tuition, the fees, that kind of thing, plus the foregone wages. So we're going to add in, I'm sorry, I'm running out of space and my pen is being weird. So we're going to add in the foregone wages, and I'm putting that's another bracket there. Here, let me rewrite this. This says the cost plus the foregone wages W naught. So that's how much you could have earned while you were in the school, but you didn't. And that's all in the first period. So I could discount it. I could put 1 plus R here and discount it. But because you're incurring those costs and losing those wages at the very beginning of this analysis in period T, the superscript here is 0. Anything raised to the 0 power equals what? 1. So I could just as well ignore this. That's sort of like scratching it out. Let me change the ink color. I could just as well ignore it because it's just a 1, right? And so that gives me, Sam, I see your hand. That gives me an equation for the net profit. And if the net profit from going to school is greater than 0, then you should go to school. If you are maximizing, right? If you're a utility maximizer whose utility is increased by your income, then a rational economic actor who's trying to make decisions so as to maximize utility would stay in school, because the gain in the net earnings, discounted to today's value, is in excess of the cost of going to school. It's the same equation that we use for analyzing whether or not the purchase of a slave was profitable. It's the same equation that lay behind the claim about why neighboring farms would all mechanize. It's all the same equation. Sam? I'm just assuming that all the education takes place I assume that all the education takes place in 1 year. So if you want the education to take place in 4 years, then I have to have C sub t and lost wage sub t and then do it for each of 4 years. So you could add that complication. Yeah. Well, you're assuming that all the education happens in 1 period. Okay. So now what Golden and Katz do is, instead of having this equation, which is the same equation we've seen before, instead of having it over a long period of time the way that we've got it there, they're going to make this easier and assume that people live in just 2 periods. They live in the period 1 is when you're in school, and period 2 is life after school. And so instead of having year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, year 6, year 7, great. We've got period 1 in school, period 2 out of school. And in that case, this same equation simplifies to this, that the earnings in the period 2 when you're out of school minus the wages you would have earned if you hadn't gone to school in that period 2. And then we're going to discount it by 1 plus the interest rate. Wait, I'm going to change these from 2s to 1s. Change those 2s to 1s. Then I'm going to discount it by 1 plus the interest rate raised to the 1 power. And I'm going to subtract that from the cost of getting an education. So what the direct costs are of getting my education, plus the opportunity cost, which is the lost wages in that period in which I'm in school. I could discount that, but I'm in that period right now, so it's 1 plus r raised to the 0, and that just equals 1. And once again, I'm going to see, is this greater than or equal to 0? If it's greater than 0, I should go to school. If it's less than 0, I shouldn't stay in school. All I've done is I've taken a life that has different values over each of the years once you're out of school and compressed all of that into one period and said we live in 2 periods, in school, out of school. Okay. Let me show you some pictures, and I'm going to have to hold off on looking at I hate doing this, it's a whole week before I can come back and do it. We're going to have to hold off on looking at the regression results until when I come back. But let me show you the pictures. So they're going to use for this analysis, they've got state-by-state variation in graduation rates. I want you to see the next picture. This state-by-state variation in graduation rates, the top one is 1910, the bottom one is 1928. I blew up the legends. I want you to see that these are, that a dark state in 1910 has a lower graduation rate than the dark states in 1928. But there is quite a bit of variation across the country, and there's a mix-up. There's a change in the order of who are the top states in 1910 versus who are the top states in 1928. So they're going to exploit that variation in their analysis. I printed out this picture for you to look at. That's the variation today in high school graduation rates. So this is high school graduation rates. The lighter the state, the smaller the share of the population that has graduated from high school. What state do you think is ranked number 50 out of 50? California. California and Texas are tied for number 50. Wyoming, the top 5 are Wyoming, Minnesota, Montana, New Hampshire, and Alaska. The bottom 5, Texas, California, Mississippi, Louisiana, Kentucky. So we want to think about whether or not the analysis we're going to look at a week from today would also apply to that pattern in 2010. Y'all have a good day. Be very good for Professor Such so he brags on you.